Hi, everyone. I was going to say good morning, but then I realized that might not be accurate since Priyanka is in India and just told us it's 8:30. It's 8:30 in the evening there. But welcome, everyone. Welcome to the 32nd meetup that we're organizing in New York, which is somewhat mind-blowing. Thank you. We started this community, and we'll get into it a little bit during the discussion, but we started the community mainly to enable startup founders building technology products for supply chain, connect with people in the industry. And so that has been the driving mission, if you would speak. And through all the events that we've hosted, we've come to realize that that is something that people find just as important as we thought we would find it personally. The community is now 4,000 plus people in the Worldwide Supply Chain Federation, which is a network of meetups, not all of them as active as New York, because as Tim and Pam will attest, and I'm sure Sarah too, but building community is not as easy as a lot of people think it is. And so in the other chapters, you know, the organizers have gotten things going, and then they realized, wait, people don't just fall out of the sky and come to events. But you know, that's their growing pains with everything. So 4,000 people in the community on Meetup, 8,000 plus in the community on Clubhouse, which is mind-blowing because we didn't start on Clubhouse until December 2020. So altogether across those two channels, close to 12,000 people. And I like to brag that we have members on every continent in the world except Antarctica. And we're working, we're working on getting some members in Antarctica too. But on that note, I'll turn things over to Priyanka, who's going to be the MC for today's event.
Thanks, Brian. Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome to the New York Supply Chain Meetup. My name is Priyanka, and I'm the Managing Director at Charlie Pesty, where we specialize in marketing and PR only for special supply chain and logistics folks. I'm really happy to be here, and events are really my jam. I enjoy, organizing them. I enjoy strategizing on them, and as part of our mandate, we have to book events for clients. It's been quite a wild ride this past year, what with delays, cancellations, pivots, virtual formats, and the occasional Zoom bomb. Brian, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I remember.
But before we get into the nuances of all that, I'd like to take a minute to introduce this stellar panel that I have with me. I mean, you guys are supply chain celebrities, but for the sake of anyone who's been under a huge rock or hiding in a cave, could you please take a moment to introduce yourselves? Duna, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Dooner. I'm a FreightWaves TV host and producer. I produce podcasts as well over at FreightWaves. I do Freight's Great Variety Show, What the Truck, a one-on-one deep dive career journey show called FreightWaves Insiders, and a micro podcast, The Fastest Minute in Freight, which is a bunch of headlines that I read every morning called The Morning Minute. That's me.
Awesome. That's a lot. Thanks, Duna. Pam, would you like to go next?
Sure. I'm Pam Simon, and I'm the conference chair of Manifest, which will be taking place January 25 to 27 at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas.
Awesome. Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I think I was there for that Zoom bomb, by the way.
Yes, yes, you were. Yes, you were.
That was quite the moment in supply chain. That's so hi, everyone. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey, founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain podcast, media company. I'm also the founder and host of Blended, which is the newest conversation in diversity and inclusion. And I've been in the industry for over 20 years, particularly on the logistics side. And then I moved over to the media side. So that's just a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Brian, I don't think anyone here knows you. But I do see I do see that we have a lot of first timers who've, signed up, and people just trickling into the conversation. So if you'd like to briefly.
So I'm the insane person who sat down at his desk one day and said, no, you know what, we need a supply chain meetup in New York. And that's how this all began. Simultaneously, I'm building a venture fund to invest in early stage technology startups that are building innovations for global supply chains, mostly software focused, but we'll look at other things as well. So those are the two things. And I'm happy to say that we're now in business. We're actually now making tiny investments. And just like with the supply chain meetup, you've got to start somewhere. So that's exciting from my perspective.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Another reason that I've pulled this panel together is because I like to, as an events specialist, I like to really dig deep, and I appreciate the way each of you has a different format, has a different intent, and I'd like to understand a little bit of why you do what you do. And Brian, I want to start with you because with the New York Supply Chain Meetup and the Worldwide Supply Chain Federation, I see no obvious commercial angle. I don't see a gold, silver, platinum sponsorship. I want to know, what went through your mind? Will that change? Do you think that's going to change? Do you think you're going to go into the whole sponsorship model in the future?
So just like I said when I was introducing myself, I literally was studying, trucking and shipping, teaching myself. I had just met Craig at Freight Waves, and we had a long conversation. And at 7 a.m., I was at my desk, just brewed a cup of coffee, and I was like, I need to go to the supply chain meetup in New York. There has to be a supply chain meetup in New York. And so I looked for it, and there wasn't one. And I'm quoting what went through my mind. I was like, how can there be no supply chain meetup in New York? Fuck this, I'm going to start one. And so I started it because I wanted to hang out with people who were thinking about technology and supply chain all the time. Right? It was really, I want to learn. And I think doing this in the context of a community is the way to do it. Now, once I realized that I was building a community, then I thought to myself, wait, maybe there'll be people who want to sponsor it. And we spoke to a few people and they didn't seem to be interested in sponsoring. And I thought to myself, that's fine, because I really didn't do this for sponsors. I'm doing it for myself. And so what we have focused on instead is figuring out, one, can we do this without a commercial angle, just like you said? And then two, if we get to the point where it makes sense to bring on sponsors, what does that mean? Because the thing we want to avoid is a situation in which the sponsor's agenda drives what the community does. We really think that the power of our community is enabling the folks who are desperately in need of technology innovations for their supply chains to connect and meet with the people who are creating those innovations, and to have honest conversations that are low risk, right? And so I worry sometimes that if sponsors get too powerful in determining what the community does, then it takes away from that goal. So the specific answer to your question is, I do not know. I do not know if it will change.
All right. We can work with that, Brian. Sarah, I mean, I feel like I really know you. I mean, we've never met. We've done a couple of things together in the past, but every time I'm on LinkedIn, I see something different happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain. And I see how it's changed. I see how, there are spin-offs now. Your podcast has evolved. It's diversified. Talk to us about that. What has that journey been like?
Well, it's been an absolutely crazy ride, because when I started this, I don't even think supply chain media were words that anybody used And now they're used quite a bit today. I mean, when I started the podcast, it was back in 2016. And it was really, there was a number of different things that were going on at that moment. I was working at a freight forwarder, and I knew that we had to really be able to tell our brand story. And I wanted a unique and creative way to be able to do that. But like Brian, I was looking for one place for supply chain professionals to go to kind of figure out who's in the market and what they're doing and how they can help me. And there wasn't really one place to do that. And so that's another reason why I started the podcast. And the other one was that I was listening to a lot of podcasts at the time. And I thought, well, hey, if Lewis Howes can do a podcast, why can't Sarah Barnes Humphrey? And that's literally how we got started. We called it Two Babes Talk Supply Chain because I had a male co-host, and it was kind of tongue in cheek because at the time there in supply chain marketing, it was very stuffy. There wasn't a lot of creativity, and so we were just trying to push the boundaries a little bit. And so that's how it started. And it was called Two Babes Talk Supply Chain. And then unfortunately, something happened in 2017 and I lost my team and my co-host and everything like that. And in January 2018, I started the Woman in Supply Chain series. But by April, no women wanted to come on a show called Two Babes Talk Supply Chain where I was the only host. So I had to rebrand it to Let's Talk Supply Chain. So lots of things have changed is I guess my way, like that's what I'm trying to say is lots of things have changed from the wording that we use, obviously in supply chain media, from the fact that I started as Two Babes Talk Supply Chain and now we're Let's Talk Supply Chain and we're going in a lot of different directions. But really the main reason as to why I started the podcast hasn't changed at all. And it's really our running philosophy throughout everything that we do at Let's Talk Supply Chain.
Awesome. That's been quite a journey. And I've seen a lot of different spin-offs recently, Sarah. I can see that you've started, something in the APAC, and I want to understand how difficult is it to design and deliver this content, through social media especially, and keep your followers engaged.
It's gotten easier. I mean, I do listen to the audience. I think what else helps as well is that I elevate different voices within the industry. So I'm not just elevating C-suite. I'm not just elevating upper management. I'm elevating voices that are coming from different parts of the globe, from different parts of the industry. And so I think that really helps maybe to keep people engaged because then they see somebody that they potentially resonate with in our content. And it's become easier, I guess, from a content perspective, just because of the amount of content that we're putting out. But again, you also have to think about how are you going to revamp it? How are you going to expand? What does that look like? And I had the opportunity this year to franchise, which is really cool, I think, into Let's Talk Supply Chain Asia Pac. I don't know if there's another podcast out there that has franchised. I'm not entirely sure. But definitely looking to expand on that and really just deliver content. So Asia Pac is going to create content based on supply chains in the Asia Pacific region, whereas most of my audience is in North America. And so we create a lot of content around North American supply chain. So it gives us an opportunity to really focus on different aspects of the industry in different places as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Pam, Manifest is this, fairly large in-person event that's powering on, and there are a lot of spin-offs that are happening. I can see it. I mean, I think Reela pivoted. And did you guys consider doing a virtual event ever? And why are you sticking to the physical in-person event?
Honestly, we had discussed it initially and decided it was off the table. We all come from the live events background. Initially, Manifest was supposed to take place of June of this year, but early on we punted to January, which people are much more receiving of. We have announced that Manifest will be requiring proof of vaccination prior to entry, and we're doing everything possible to ensure safety for our attendees. When it comes to live, personally, I believe people have embarked on their version of, or there's some sort of version of return to normal. which includes, friends and shopping and sporting events. And I think it's a really exciting time to be returning to live events. I think that our community has been craving that connection, that human connection that you can't necessarily translate over virtual. For example, Plus will be doing autonomous ride-alongs at Manifest. And that's an experience that just only works in person, and you really bond with the people you're doing that with. So from what we've been hearing, very excited to be live again.
Awesome. But what are the real challenges at this time? I mean, with things changing, you can't really predict what's going to happen. How did you decide to focus on that? How did you,
At the end of the day, it wasn't, we took virtual off the table. Again, we all come from live, and the feedback that we've been getting, we've done a bunch of research and reports out that people want to be live again. And we're seeing that. We're seeing many more events announcing, going this direction. CES is requiring proof of vaccination. The Olympics just announced they'll be doing that as well. And we've been seeing it, from the music community as well, and festivals.
Right. Duna, I have to give it up to FreightWaves. I mean, I've been working with you guys for a while, and I see that you've managed to do justice to really all formats. What's that magic? I mean, how do you make that happen?
We started, it's interesting that there's sort of this conversation between virtual and a live event where, our last live event, which was FreightWaves Live Chicago, we actually had two streams going on plus the live event, which was great. We had a live stage, and then we had a live desk where we did a bunch of our shows and promoted that to that audience. And we brought in people, anyone who's working the booths and the audience. So you could kind of get a feel in a virtual of getting that live energy, but also not necessarily having to travel. And I think that that's the world we should be moving towards next. I think virtual is great. It's been necessary due to the pandemic. We had to pivot to it. We had no choice because we had Live in Atlanta coming up in, I believe it was May of last year. And that was at the height of the pandemic. And concurrently, we had already done that stream in 2019. We were building out the FreightWaves TV studio. So we had the gear and we had the capability. So we wanted to sort of take out the challenge of seeing what we could do and how we could evolve the virtual format. But I think, like you're all saying too, the appetite is really for people to get back together. We're human beings. It's human nature to get together and congregate and share in some of those things. So I think virtual can be a very supplemental asset to that as well. And I think you're leaving a gigantic component on the table by keeping that out. In fact, we talk about festivals, right? She actually mentioned festivals, and you look at something like Coachella. Coachella, you go in live, they sell out, but they also live stream the thing, and it doesn't impact ticket sales. If anything, it increases the marketing and scope and the community that can experience something like a Coachella or Lollapalooza that just happened in Chicago, which was actually quite nice to catch on air. So I think the reason we've done it is because we were capable of doing it. And, you have to talk to your partners, and it's always a challenge, especially in the pandemic, when you had to pivot from that live thing. People are expecting these live booths, this live type of show, and you have to transition everything into virtual. And it's a bit of an unknown. It was a bit of untested ground before we got there. But I'm with all of you. I can't wait to be back in person without any of the scares and concerns of the pandemic or citywide lockdowns, and we're entering flu season. So, fingers crossed going into that, because, I'm seeing great videos of pictures of CSCMP going on and a number of other events. And, I need to be there.
Got it. Duna and Sarah, this one's for you. You guys are the faces behind these brands that you've created, right? You guys are the brand, not the faces behind, rather. You guys are the brand. Talk to us about that dynamic. How does that work? Do you get sick days? Do you get one off season?
Well, like Sarah's, I started around the same time as Sarah. She had two babes. I had the shipping pod. All of 2016, I was trying to launch this podcast for this company I worked for called Ocean Air. But as Sarah had said, in 2016 and earlier, podcasting wasn't really viable. The shows that are out on the market were like webinars with stripped audio. I listened to Joe Rogan, Bill Simmons, Bill Burr, those kind of people. So I wanted to make a pod like you, Brian. You wanted a meetup, right? You're like, I want my kind of meetup. I wanted my kind of show. So I had to go out there and make it. And ever since since I started, I'm sure the same is similar for Sarah. I've been the producer, I've been the booker, and it hasn't really mattered which show I've gone to because the whole entire time I've built all of these relationships because I'm the one that's personally reaching out to every guest. I'm the one doing the pre and post production. I'm the one that's offering them the opportunity. I'm the one that's having the conversation, and I'm the one that's getting to know them. And when you do that, over 4, 5, 6 years, I mean, you just become, it doesn't matter necessarily what the logo is or what the show is, because people go, okay, I know Sarah's content or I know Dooner's content, and I understand what lane that's going to be in and what they're going to deliver. And I think that we've both found audiences by understanding that we do represent a brand, and it's sort of weird, and I don't want to sound like egotistical, but when you sort of think of yourself and you realize you're building an audience, you almost have to look, because I'm my own manager too, so I got to like look down on myself and be like, is it a good idea for Timothy Dooner, the person, to do that for Dooner and what we're trying to accomplish in that kind of goal? And I think it's a cool, and I wonder if Sarah has the same skill that she's developed over time to just sort of like remove the personal side of it and understand that you're actually starting to get into a realm where you're representing a business entity yourself.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you on that. But going back to what Priyanka said about personal days or sick days or whatever, I don't know what those are. I don't know about you, Tim, but I have no idea what those mean. I haven't had a vacation in a very long time because of COVID. And I feel like I'm working all the time. But really, when I got started, I was the only asset that I had to work with. And so that's what I had to do. But the intention was never to build a brand just around me. Because if you think about that, it's not very easy to scale. There's only so much time in a day, that you can really be doing things. And like Dooner said, you're a producer, you're finding the guests, like you're doing everything. And in the beginning, that's what I did. But the goal of the show was really to elevate the voices within the community. And so it was just the asset that I had to begin with. It has, obviously I am, I guess, the face of the brand, but now looking at different ways to be able to change that and bring more people into the fold and more people into the conversation and things like that. And yeah, it's Dooner's right. Like, you have to take a look at who you are as a person versus who you are as a brand, and what are the values for each, and what are the goals for each, and what you want to be doing and what you don't want to be doing. And that's really difficult to navigate sometimes and some days.
Yeah, I mean, and just to dovetail what Sarah is saying there in terms of opening a community, on What the Truck, it's 3 days a week. I do 4 interviews a show. That's 12 interviews a week plus the other shows. So I'm talking to 15, 16 people, giving them a platform and a forum. And I think it's just really cool that with a logo like FreightWaves on it, on their platform, and a show like What the Truck with the brand we've established, I can have Bob Beesterfield on the same exact show as a truck driver who's trying to get a job in visual effects in California. And then Brian can also be on the show complaining about not having any fans in Antarctica.
I've been on Duna's show, and we're talking about some technology thing, and a truck driver calls in, and suddenly we have to engage with it's the most amazing thing. I'm like, on which other show would I be talking about artificial intelligence and then have someone call in who's on the highway in a truck with a question he wants us to talk about? So I've enjoyed What the Truck immensely.
Awesome. The one thing that I think we can't do effectively in a virtual format is networking. I mean, people meeting people, exchanging business cards, or, just grabbing a cup of coffee. So Pam, I think that's one thing that people will be looking forward to the most with these, there's only so much content that you can sit and engage with remotely. So do you want to talk to us about, what networking is planned at Manifest and what the themes are?
Yeah, of course. So our off-grid experience will feature a robotic zone featuring, Dematic and Swisslog and Geek Plus. We'll have all the autonomous vehicles present. As I said, Plus is going to be doing ride-alongs, and we'll go even further into LiDAR with Hesai and AI. We'll go into electric vehicles with XOS, to drones with Flytrex and Wingcopter. And generally speaking, everyone will be able to experience their creature comforts. So food, drink, entertainment. We're going to get a little weird. We'll have a bacon Bloody Mary donut bar. There'll be a puppy lounge sponsored by Geodis. We'll have, craft mocktails with the Front Door Collective. So we're going to keep it weird. We're going to keep it fun. And it'll definitely be, not your average show.
Wait, did you say puppy lounge?
I did. I did.
What is it? What's a puppy lounge?
It's exactly as you're imagining how fabulous it is.
It's just like a bar, but they give you like a puppy instead of a shot?
Yeah, it's like going to a lounge with all the puppies.
And Pam, you left out Ludacris. I mean,
yes, and Ludacris will be Ludacris will be closing out our show.
Wow,
you beat me to it. Yes, Ludacris will be closing out the show.
I mean, that's amazing. What more can you want from an event, right?
Wait, and this is a supply chain event?
Yes. Yes. We'll be covering the entire scope of the industry from maritime through last mile and within the four walls.
I have to make a comment, and I'd love to hear what the rest of the panel has experienced. But I remember in 2015, 2016, 2017, even through 2019, right? I was like, supply chain, technology. Oh, that's so boring. Who cares, etc., etc. Then the pandemic hits, and suddenly that's all.
Supply chain is mainstream. Supply chain is now tier one mainstream. Now. People know what supply chain is now.
Ludacris is closing out a supply chain conference. Like, what's going on?
I mean, he's invested in a number of companies in the space.
What?
Yes, there's actually a number of hip hop artists and football and basketball players that have started to invest in the industry.
I need to talk to you.
We need to get them in our fund, Brian.
Maybe they want to be LPs in our fund.
Kyrie Irving, he just invested $500,000 into Fleeting, which is a Black-owned business in the Southeast over here. Yeah.
And Fleeting will be presenting at Manifest as well.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
I'm a huge Pierre. Like when you listen to him talk, you'll turn into Kool-Aid Man. You'll start running through walls. I'm not even kidding. The man is an inspiration.
Yeah,
it's amazing what he's done.
Yeah,
that's amazing. But I see, a lot of these event organizers have invested very heavily in these virtual platforms. So we're coming to now the question of hybrid events. And Brian, I'm going to ask you this. I'm going to put you on the spot here. The New York Supply Chain Meetup is no longer filled with people living in New York. It's really global now. So do you think we're going to go back to physical in-person New York Supply Chain meetups, or are we going to, go hybrid and do this physical plus virtual? I just want your thoughts on all this.
So again, because there's no commercial angle, we are constantly thinking about what is the least expensive way in which we can host an event that still creates value for the audience and for our members. And so one of the things we've thought about is perhaps do most events virtual and then have a couple of landmark events that are in person, right? So if it's 2 in-person events, then it's easier for people to decide if they want to attend one or both. Mm-hmm. Or the alternative is, if we had the resources, like Duna was saying, find a way to do live events and then live stream them so people who can't attend them. But it's for us, it's something that we're thinking about. We don't have any good answers yet, because even based on the way that we operate, for example, in order to host a live event, we need someone who will donate space. But if they don't donate anything else, space is one thing that we constantly are struggling to find. Before the pandemic, Microsoft had been really generous and was hosting us each time we held a meetup. But then, of course, the pandemic has thrown a kink in those arrangements. And so I'm thinking it will probably be, and for the reason that you gave, that we now have members everywhere, that will probably do mostly virtual with maybe 2, maximum 3 in-person events during a year.
Yep, that sounds right. Duna, coming to you, since you guys have done the whole spectrum, right? What do you think, what would you say is the most popular format? And if it's all of the above, then why? I mean, what works for whom?
I think in person obviously is, especially when when people have had it kept away from them. I mean, there's all this, like, people are acting like events, and there's some great events, but a lot of events too, especially the regional ones. Like in Boston, I went to, like, let's be honest here, there were fluorescent lights, stale donuts, and boring conversation, and the same people every single time. So, I mean, one of the awesome things about virtual, and one thing that I don't think a lot of people take advantage of, is they go, oh, it's harder to network, which could not be further from the truth. If you go to a real conference and you want to talk to the speaker, you usually have to wait in line and all those things. If you have a little bit of digital savvy, you hear someone speaking at an event or you hear someone comment, go to their LinkedIn and message them right away. There's so many less people inboxing them about their speech that just happened. I guarantee you, you will almost always get a response. Now, I realize my response are a little colored because I'm a producer for FreightWaves, so I don't have that much of a hard time versus like a salesperson getting a response. But you'd be surprised how many of them are like, yeah, you're one of the only people who have reached out. Thank you for saying this about my speech. Because, people have egos, right? And they go up and they speak and they want to know that they did a good job or someone heard it or was receptive. Because one of the biggest detractions of this virtual world is there's nothing more anticlimactic than one of these sessions is done and you click that X and then the room goes silent. It is like it's the lamest feeling in the world. It's terrible. Where do you go from there? Well, then to make it exciting, then you go reach out to those speakers and you do those things. But it's cool. It's like we have a guest on from India right here because of virtual. The other advantage is it's made guest access a lot easier too, because like, for example, today, I'm keynoting the Transporian Summit and I'm also here at the same time. How is that possible? Because of the magic of technology. But I think that definitely, there's nothing better than a great in-person conference. There's just not.
Yes.
Can I jump in here?
Absolutely.
Because I echo what they've all said so far, but I also think that there is additional revenue streams when you look at a hybrid model. So the in-person as well as the online, a lot of event organizers are taking a look at it in a different light and seeing the possibilities from an additional revenue stream that they haven't really thought of before. And COVID's kind of brought that to light. And I also think on the networking side, I think, when organizers really take the time and think about the people that are coming to their events, not only in the audience, but also from a vendor perspective, and really put some effort into like one-on-one meetings from a virtual standpoint, that makes all the difference. I have heard so much amazing feedback from different people that have gone to events that have had one-on-one meetings that have been completely intentional by the organizers, and they've blown any in-person conference away. So I really think it all depends on how you are organizing it, how you're thinking about it, what you're doing for the vendors and the audience to bring them together on a virtual stage as well. And those one-on-one meetings can do really well virtually, but also in person, because they work really, really well in person as well.
So I'm going to jump in on that one. We are doing in-person one-on-one meetings for Match with Manifest, so that shippers and vendors and suppliers get to connect with each other, as well as office hours with investors. So when any startups or companies or brands that want to sit down and actually have those conversations with the VC, like from seed stage through SPAC, they'll be available to do that.
Duna, talk to me about content. I mean, do you have like machines working for you? How do you guys churn out this content?
I mean, it's all automated. Otherwise I don't know how he does it.
No, so here's the thing. I love supply chain, and I started out in this business being a broker with FedEx Trade Networks. I used to have to take 3 trains from Dorchester, Mass. I used to have to take the red line to the orange line to the blue line, then walk a mile from Orient Heights. And this isn't even like your grandfather's story. It was not uphill both ways. It was flat ground, but it was still a mile in New England weather. And, it would take me over an hour to get to work every single day. And I did that for over 6 years before moving through the industry. I got fired from my last sales job in 2016. It sent me on this journey of podcasting. So I'm on a vision quest. I'm on a mission of passion. And I also realized how great the opportunity it is that I have, and some of the pioneers in the sort of renaissance of podcasting, like myself and Sarah. I think we both can see that sort of clear view and that clear horizon of how much further this can go. I mean, I still don't even think we're anywhere close to the apex or the zenith. And I think that's what makes me keep going every day. And also, like, I was in sales. I come from a world, after brokerage, I got into sales. I come from a world where nobody wanted to talk to me, right? Everyone wanted to kick me out of the office. And now I get to talk to nearly anybody I want in the supply chain, a lot of people within business without other dynamics. And I get to tell the story of freight. And I just think that's so freaking cool. So most of it I do because I want to do it. I mean, that's why I'm posting at all hours of the day. It just really interests me. And I also see, like Sarah said earlier, the opportunity, which is people talk about technology and freight and how outdated it had been, but so had media in supply chain. And the approach that media took to it always being so stoic and so stuffy and everything procedural. And I remember when I got in this business in 2005, I had a really hard time learning from, the JOCs of the world, because this is stuff that was written for people with way more experience than I had. I just walked through the door. I just wanted to sort of understand what some of this stuff meant. And when I was thinking about how to do a podcast, I'm like, well, this isn't a webinar. People don't have a pen and paper. They want to have feelings. They want to understand concepts of freight that they can then dive deeper into it, instead of just inundating them with like numbers and concepts that supply chain, it's so broad that none of these things may be even relevant to that particular person sitting in that chair, where concepts and conditions and people's stories and people's career journeys absolutely are. And just having the privilege to be able to do that is what really motivates me and keeps me doing all this content in my own time.
I'd like to echo what Tim said, because when we first started telling people that we were trying to build a meetup in New York, we got a lot of questions along the lines of, do we really need another supply chain organization? And what people were really asking was, do we need another supply chain trade organization? Because there are a lot of those, right? And back to Tim's point, I said, we have nothing against trade organizations, but those are communities for industry insiders. And what we want to do, based on our understanding of what's going to happen in the future, is to create a community that's, one, is grassroots driven, right? So there isn't any big corporation that's saying, make this happen. And then two, we want to make it open and welcoming to people who have knowledge of technology and innovation, not necessarily supply chain. We want this to be the community that they feel welcome to come in and ask questions and talk and debate and make their opinions known and say, no, you're doing that wrong because you could do it this other way. Because I think that's how innovation happens, right? I think it's taking ideas from places you wouldn't originally have thought to look, and then asking yourself, well, why are we still doing things this way in 2021? Why can't we try a different approach? So I think that's an important point.
Sarah, I mean, this goes for Duna as well, but you guys can do this in your sleep, right? You've been doing it so long, and you know how to do it. But what happens when someone who comes on your podcast is shy? How do you get them to engage? How do you get them to tell their story? Because a podcast is about telling these stories, and we have these amazing stories in supply chain, but people are generally shy. And how do you get them to come out and tell you what they're about, what their solution is about, and also make that engaging?
You have to rock them out of their comfort zone, because usually look, what happens in this business is a lot of people have seen that media that's like these webinar style things, right? So they want to come in, they want to regurgitate a lot of talking points. And I think that that's where the guest research comes in. That's where the pre-show comes in, and just understanding a little bit about that guest and hitting them with some weird fact about themselves that lets them know that you did some research and that you care, and it helps them bring down the guard. That's my approach.
Yeah, mine is just, I don't know, I bring a lot of energy to the conversation, and I get a lot of feedback from a lot of people that I put them at ease even before we press the record button. And so I think for a lot of people, it's just about having a conversation with me. And a lot of times I'm talking about their brand, I'm talking about things that they're passionate about. And once I put them at ease, they feel a little bit better about just sharing their journey. I think, in my Woman in Supply Chain series and Blended, I thought it would be a lot harder to bring people out of their shells, because they're talking about themselves and they're talking about their journeys. And that hasn't been the biggest struggle. The biggest struggle with my Woman in Supply Chain series is that women don't want to promote themselves. So they'll come on and they'll have the conversation with me and they'll talk about their journey. And then after, when we release the episode, it falls flat because they actually don't take it and promote themselves and let people know that they've been on a podcast. That's the biggest struggle that I have for my Woman in Supply Chain series. When it comes to blended, that one is really, really, really cool because I bring 5 different people from different walks of life together. And we're talking about hard topics. Like, we're talking about diversity and inclusion. And none of them have met each other before. And so we spend 15 minutes introducing themselves, or we all introduce ourselves. And then I hit the record button and we talk for about an hour and a half. And that one, I never know how it's going to go. And sometimes I have to like say somebody's name to get them to jump into the conversation. But by the end of the conversation, everybody is friends. They all want to connect on LinkedIn. And a lot of people have said to me, you know, I feel heard today. Thank you very much. And so it's really just about creating those safe spaces where people feel comfortable sharing their authentic selves. And I think that's something that, you know, without, I don't know, being egotistical, like Dooner said, I think that's something that I do well naturally.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk about the bang for your buck. Yeah, let's talk about sponsorships. What should people do? How should they go about sponsoring an event? Because a lot of time I work with customers or clients and they go into these events without really having a pre-planned strategy. And then when I talk to them about strategy, it just makes so much sense. So I just want to understand what your ideas are on getting that maximizing that participation or that sponsorship. Anyone who wants to go first? Yes, Pam.
I think getting to know the sponsor, what they're looking for, what their overall goal is for achieving it. Is it branding? Is it meeting certain people? Is it showcasing their technology? So really having those more in-depth conversations with the potential sponsor to understand what's the right fit. We offer a variety of different sponsor opportunities, as you heard, the puppy lounge, but that's not right for everyone, right? So it's really figuring out what's the right fit for that sponsor, and for them to be able to achieve their goals, and then we can do our part on our side to make sure it works.
Yeah, I would agree with her sentiment there, and I think that it's always. I think that logistic marketing departments, a lot of them too, can sometimes be kind of remedial. It's not like the most glamorous job to a lot of people being the head of logistics marketing for a company. And you kind of see that in action sometimes. Don't get me wrong. There's some really great ones. There's some really great PR people. But I think the ones where they make a mistake is they just go, hey, we want to get these talking points out there. And instead of being like, why do you want to advertise at this event? Why do you want to be on this particular show? Is it because you like the host style? If you like the host style, then we should connect you with them. And you should work with them to make up this segment. Because otherwise, if you just want a bunch of talking points, it might not fit the show format. It's going to stick out like a sore thumb. You, the host, the audience, everybody's going to be kind of like, okay, all right, next up in line. So I do think that if marketing departments are a little bit more proactive, and not a ton, just a little bit more, just ask the question, hey, can I connect with the event producer? This is sort of the message we want to get out there. I think you can see a lot more success because you're going to talk to some of the creatives, and those creative visions of both teams can meet.
Can I jump in too? I think one of the biggest downfalls is utilizing the content to the maximum potential. I think a lot of times, the brands aren't utilizing the opportunity by posting enough, by tagging people, bringing people that are going to find value from what they're doing and what they've created. Post-show, pre-show, there's so much that you can do, and there's so much that you can get out of sponsorships, but you have to have the strategy to be able to do that. And sometimes, people like us can help you with that. You just need to ask those questions as well. But you've got to get your team involved. You got to get the people in the company involved and really maximizing that opportunity.
Yeah, it's a massive organic push. I mean, especially podcasting is just whenever I see someone put out a podcast, and if they don't promote it, and we even have some internal ones at Freightways. We brought on some hosts. They do their show. They don't promote their own show. Their guests don't promote it. It gets like 20 downloads because that's what podcasting is. If you don't promote, nobody's going to listen to something unless you're constantly out there saying, here's when it happens. Here's the value on there. Here's a clip from it that you might actually like. Do you want to sell the funny? Do you want to sell the informative? Do you want to sell the guest? There's all different approaches. And, a lot of times in logistics, we don't have people that are just really amazing at social media. I think that we're getting better and better as a space, but I think that some people just think that the easy part is, or the hard part is like recording the show, where that's like the easiest part. Like my work, like when I hit record, fine, I'm just going off the dome and I'm riffing with you. Everything else is the hard part, getting the show together and then promoting it. Like I bet Sarah can agree with this. Before you started a podcast, you didn't realize how much of a digital marketer you would have to become. It's a great skill set to acquire, but oh my gosh, like you are more of a digital marketer than a podcaster if you want a podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are the goals, right? Are you coming on the show for brand awareness? Are you coming on the show for lead generation? What are you talking about what's happening today, versus what's happening in your business? Those are two very, very different approaches. And that also affects what you do after the show is released and how many times you can promote it. Because if you're talking about what's happening today, you're not going to promote 3 months from now.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. All right. Guys, if you have any questions, I'm talking to the attendees here. If you have any questions about events, what the strategy should be, how much your budget should be, now's the time. If not, let's go into some crystal ball gazing. What's in store for 2022? Pam, I know you have Manifest coming up. Is there anything else apart from Manifest that's going on?
I mean, for us, Manifest is January 2022. We already locked in our dates for 2023. So that'll be January 30 to February 1st, if you want to add that to your calendars now. Yes, so that's our mission for now. I did launch a fireside chat series. So I am doing interviews with a number of our speakers. That's really the only virtual component. So you'll see a lot more of those types of conversations coming out in 2022.
Great. Duna, what's happening over with your content machines and
For me personally, just making What the Truck even bigger and bigger and bigger, and bringing guests from all across business, and from the college student to the professor to the truck driver to the Bob Easterfields of the world, to the Alex Liebermans from Morning Brew, and bring all those together and having those conversations about freight, because we're in a really difficult time, and this is a great time to be having those conversations in this space with the shipping crisis. My goal has always been to make freight mainstream. It's not my fault that a boat got stuck in the Suez Canal, or shipping rates are $26,000 from Shanghai. But either way, freight's mainstream. So I'm going to jump in and I'm going to yell as loud as I can in this space while it's happening. I hope we get back to live events. I know we have some planned next year, but even if we don't, I mean, I still get to talk to everybody in freight anyway, 3, 4 times, 5 times a week. So either way, I'm going to be talking to all of you.
Awesome. Sarah?
Well, I can't give away all our secrets for 2022, but it's going to be our best year yet. One of the things that I'm working on that I'm super, super proud of, again, is Blended. So it started out as a podcast. It's still a podcast. We're coming up onto 1 year of the podcast, but I'm also working with a group of individuals that are going to take those resources and we're going to actually expand them. And we're talking about the Blended Pledge. And we're going to be working with conference organizers to help see more diversity on stages as well as in audiences. And we're going to work with brands to be able to enable us to be able to do that. Because we think conferences are really a good place to start with diversity and inclusion. And I think for us to be able to support conference organizers as well as people that want to speak and want to have access to those conferences, just so we can see more diversity in the industry. And then, we've just got a lot of really, really great content and different ideas, more expansion. It's all on the way for 2022. So stay tuned.
Interesting. Brian, Do you want a crystal ball gaze?
So I try not to gaze in the crystal ball, but so before we got the meetup off the ground, I spent a lot of time studying other grassroots driven communities to see if there's anything I could learn from them. And what I came away with, Startup Grind is one that I spent some time studying. Creative Mornings is another one. I read a little bit about the history of TED, the large conference series, and their TEDx initiatives. And essentially the trend seemed to be that for a community like ours, if we made it to year 4 and year 5, right, things would be touch and go till year 4 or year 5. And then I think if you make it to year 4 and year 5, then you hit this inflection point where you start to grow. That seems to be the trend. And one of the ideas that we had, because people at the outset said to us, the issues you want to tackle through your community are don't only exist in New York, they exist everywhere. Have you thought about having chapters? Hopefully in 2022, the chapters, the growth of chapters takes off a little more robustly than it has in the past. I think the pandemic hit the brakes on that, because it just makes it more difficult for someone to start a brand new chapter. But I'm hoping that in 2022 that takes off, just because the way what is most important for the community in New York is very different from what is most important for the community in Los Angeles and Long Beach, and it's different from what the community in Bangalore wants, for example. So,
not Chattanooga.
Well, if someone wants to start a chapter in Chattanooga, I'd
we don't care about
are you
that much in
volunteering?
downtown Chattanooga. We got Tennessee River. We got barges and trucks through my world.
I was just going to say, are you volunteering to start yours?
I'm kind of busy.
There's already a lot going on in Chattanooga. So.
Okay, we have a really good question from Lisa. Lisa, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question? I think it's a great question.
Hi there. Yeah, my question was, what are the best channels or tips and tricks you've found for reaching supply chain audiences and decision makers, and through which channels?
Ooh, I'll start. I mean, one of the ones has been, especially during the pandemic, right? We have lost the conferences, but a lot more people are online than ever. And I feel that that's been it. Like LinkedIn has been really good for engaging the C-suite, and the marketing editions have been really good too for engaging the C-suite, because you have people caring about supply chain up in business, up in the C-suite, who never cared as much before. And that's actually where I draw a ton of my listeners from, is the C-suite. And I think it's because of the approach, which isn't to, get super, super deep into everything. It's a more of a broad overview of what's going on supply chain, who the people are, what new tech is coming out, what the conditions are. And it's kind of all they need to know up there. Then they can ask someone who knows more. And I think that LinkedIn's been great. I think these virtual events have been fantastic. Podcasts, obviously, podcast evangelists are great, but one of the best ways is if you have a platform like yourself internally, and not enough logistics companies are exploiting this, is starting your own marketing media arm. It doesn't have to be a ton of high lift. You could use things like Zoom or Riverside or those kind of broadcasting tools just to connect people, and it gives you access and allows you to have these conversations. And the same idea I had when I was doing sales. I'm like, how do I get in front of Bob Biesterfield at C.H. Robinson or Thomas Healy from Hyliion? How do I do that? They're not going to talk to me if I'm a sales guy. I need a Trojan horse. That Trojan horse is the podcast. And that was the initial concept there. So being creative and leveraging digital media is a fantastic way to go about it. And also, don't be afraid to do it. But maybe do it on a little bit more personal level than being pitchy all the time, because everyone gets that, and that's just noise.
I agree. LinkedIn for me is my best outlet, just reaching out to people, but also posting. I read a lot of articles and news and reports, and I think, whenever I can post as much as I can, I actually get a lot of engagement from people that are reading my posts and then wanting to continue the conversation further. So I'm a huge proponent of LinkedIn.
Yeah, I would echo that with LinkedIn. I think it's all about how you use it. So, if you aren't there yet where you want to post something yourself, I think it's just about engaging and getting involved. So start with a reaction, start with a couple of reactions. And start, if you want to be strategic, start with reactions on people's posts that you want to get connected to and that you want to be noticed by. Then go into commenting. Try commenting on different posts. I know over on our Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn page, we've got a question of the week, which is a really, really great place to start, right? You can just comment and answer the question, and then you can get used to commenting on people's posts. And then I think the other one is sharing, right? So if you find content that you're resonating with and that you really, really enjoy, you want to click the share button, but don't just share it. You want to include your perspective on that particular post and why you're sharing it with your community. So I think there's a lot of different ways other than just posting for yourself to really get involved with and be seen by people that you want to be seen by. And if you're a brand that wants to get started in media, just let me know because I got lots of things going on.
Just to echo that too, don't get discouraged when you're starting out. I know some people, they'll post on LinkedIn, they'll go, well, because the way you receive information on social media is incredibly asymmetrical. You don't see my post that gets 3 likes, you see the one that gets 250 likes. Yes. Same with everybody else. You see the guy who gets 8,000 likes on his thing, you put up one, it gets 2, and you're like, well, that's terrible, nobody liked this. No, but each of those people is representative of X. And the thing with LinkedIn and the thing in supply chain is numbers are great, but they're a lot of vanity. If I'm hitting the right people in the C-suite, if I'm hitting the right decision maker to advertise on my show or to intake the show or to decide that Sonar is a great platform for them or to become a subscriber to the newsletter, any of those things, perfect. That's what I'm shooting for. So don't worry too much about metrics. You're not going to beat the algorithm at first. Be an observationalist. Before I ever recorded a podcast, I listened to podcasts for 7 years straight every single day for multiple hours a day and it still took years of my own time to even, get traction enough that like some of you may even know who I am in this broadcast. So it's a climb, and Sarah knows it's a climb. Anybody here has been doing it. It's a climb. We've all had to go through it. Most of the people in this room, I know, and I think they're all willing to share tips offline outside of this. So find us all on LinkedIn. I'm sure any one of us is more than happy to help and help you on your journey to get noticed and tell your story.
And you don't have to be a blog writer. I get a lot of people that come to me and they're like, do I have to write a blog on LinkedIn? I'm like, absolutely not. If you want to start with the ways that I was saying, and then if you want to write a post, just be yourself, be authentic, share your perspectives. People are going to respect you for that. And they're also either going to agree with you or they're not, but that can also create some really good dialogue as long as you keep it respectful.
And if you're thinking of one-on-one reaching out, I would say research and know the person you're reaching out to. Reference like what deals they've recently done, if there's been an announcement in the news, if they've done a recent partnership with someone. So then at least they know that you've done your work, you're actually interested, as opposed to, I get a lot of like, hey, I'd love for you to just join my community.
Yeah,
great. What's your community? Give me a little bit more than that, and show that like you want me to join your community because we're connected with these people and I'm focusing on XYZ that I think could be relevant to what you're doing with Manifest. So really, I guess personalization is key.
And the one thing I would echo there too, and we don't get I don't get sales pitches, but what I do get is like pitches and share pitches from a lot of people, and they're so like broad and generic, and it's like, hey, it would be nice if you could share your page on your LinkedIn profile, or which is okay, but it's like my profile gets like 2 million views, so I'm not gonna I don't want to just put anybody on there, because at a certain point it's like that thing where you have to understand your brand. At a certain point, by clicking you're almost co-signing on that, and people hold you responsible if you make decisions on that. So and I'm not saying come with a bag of money. I'm saying just come with a better pitch than can you like or share this? Why should I like or share this? What can we do? Let's move the relationship forward. Let's not just leave it at this one little ask. Let's have a direction for the both of us, and you'll see so much more success doing that.
Yeah. Don't copy and paste.
Absolutely. I think Manik also has an interesting question. He says he asks, what do you think the current state of supply chain media is? How big do you think the audience is? I think that's a pretty loaded question. And I think I'm going to take a stab at this and say that now there's a fine line between supply chain media and mainstream media. And I think the audience is massive. But what do you guys think?
I think go ahead. I think it's grown a lot because so many, like, because of COVID, there's such a spotlight on supply chain and what's happening. So I think even more people are paying attention to it and starting to consider it more mainstream than just, oh, it's supply chain related. Sorry, continue, Dooner.
Oh, I would just say, like, from my seat at FreightWaves, with the fastest growing media company in freight, I've had a front row seat to the trajectory that it's going on. And I mean, our audience alone has triple, it's multiple, it's 2, maybe 2.5 million impressions a month on the website. It's over 200,000 downloads across our podcast network. I think it's around 500 views on FreightWaves TV, and all of that stuff keeps growing and growing. And like, the real cool part is, some people get defensive about this stuff. They'll say, like, Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, Morning Brew start to cover supply chain. To me, I couldn't be happier. Like, seed the earth, satiate that appetite, get people understanding supply chain and looking for more content. Because the thing is, the Morning Brew reader, they're never going to come to FreightWaves or listen to Let's Talk Supply Chain or anything else without that gateway drug of maybe a Morning Brew saying, hey, Suez Canal got stuck in there, and you're looking at business and you're going, oh, okay, my freight's not arriving. Oh, I need to know more. Because they're not going to give you more. They're just going to give you like a little taste. Then if they want to more, then they go to all the streams and the rivers that we sort of represent. And you're seeing way more people come to those. Part of that lockdown, part of that, this market condition that we're in right now.
Brian, I think there are a couple of questions for you in the chat. One, I think maybe Lisa would like to take this question. What is the most effective way for someone bootstrapping to produce initial small batch 3 to 4 clothing lines? I don't know.
Oh, that seems really targeted.
Yeah, maybe send a DM to Lisa on Meetup, and if she has time, she'll send an answer.
And Donald's asking about supply chain accelerators. Brian, do you want to speak to that?
Let me see. Supply chain accelerators. Do I know any supply chain accelerators? I know Plug and Play has one. And I think I heard that Techstars was in the process of trying to start one that was focused on logistics. I don't know where those plans are. Those are the two that I would probably check out. Otherwise, I can't think of the closest. The other alternative is accelerators that focus on what they call Industry 4.0. Those might have some supply chain expertise, but I think what you'll find is that the generalist accelerators typically are staffed by people who don't have a lot of deep supply chain experience. And so if supply chain experience and the ability to point you in the right direction is important, then an accelerator might not be the best answer, unless it's Plug and Play or the Techstars supply chain accelerator if they build it.
Right. All right, guys, I think we're just over an hour, and I'd like your closing comments now. Anyone has closing comments to give? Tuna, let's start with you.
Closing comments. If you want your gateway drug to freight, check out What the Truck. It's live on FreightWaves TV Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It's also video on demand on FreightWaves TV. You can download the app on iOS, Amazon, Fire, Apple TV, whatever you got, or you subscribe to it, listen to your ears, and walk around if you can't sit still like me. Pretty much the only time I'm sitting still is when I'm on air, and I can't even do that well. So check that out. Subscribe to my newsletter, freightwaves.com/WTT. You'll stay abreast of all the things that are going on in the Doonerverse, like events that we'll be at and upcoming shows and weird stories that couldn't make it on the show and market breakdowns and all that kind of stuff. And I guess my closing comments are, I think it's awesome that you have put this together. Brian, I think it's unfortunate you haven't found a fan in Antarctica yet. Maybe you'll find a flat earther looking for the edge of the earth to bring into the fold, and we can maybe learn from them, and they can learn from us about our globe. Other than that, I hope all of us, especially here, they're trying to plan events, put things on. The supply chain's been through a ton of disruption, but the information supply chain has as well, especially the in-person event side. It's been very difficult to plan. So just be patient, everybody. Show your love, show your support, and thank you for listening to me today and having me on this. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Duno. Pam, do you want to go next?
Yes. So as you know, Manifest takes place January 25 to 27 at the Paris Hotel in Las Vegas. So please get your tickets, register. It's going to be amazing. And please sign up for our newsletter, The Fest. On Fridays, we publish all of the top news and funding news so you don't miss anything. And thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Pam. Sarah?
Yeah, I just want to let individuals or brands know just to take the leap and start talking about what you're doing in supply chain. People want to know about it. Supply chain professionals want to know what's out there as far as technology and all sorts of aspects of the industry. So if you're going to take one thing away, I think, from this conversation is to take something from Nike, just do it. Get yourself out there, get your brand out there, look at creative and unique ways to be able to do that. And yeah, I'm just thankful that you guys included me on such a powerhouse panel today. Thank you guys so much for having me. And if anybody wants to listen to the podcast, it's Let's Talk Supply Chain and Blended podcast as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Brian?
So my closing comments, one, like I said at the outset, Refashioned Adventures is in business. We're just getting started. And so there's a lot of information online, both for people who might want to invest in the fund and for startups that might want us as an investor. The caveat is that we're writing very small checks. We're just getting started, but we are in business. The second thing is, let me see, what is the second thing? The second thing, the second thing is, as we have experienced over the past 18 months, supply chains are critical to everything that we do. And as we are realizing with the climate crisis, that problem is only going to get worse. We've been making the argument that there's a direct link between the way we build and manage our supply chains in the real world and what's happening with the climate. The people who are trying to solve these problems need a lot of help, which is why we started the meetup in the first place. And every single person on the panel, every single person in the audience can do something to help these entrepreneurs, these startups, these innovators succeed and reach their next milestone. You can become a customer, you can become an investor, you can write about them if you're in the business of media. So find the one thing that you can do to help these entrepreneurs succeed and do that thing. I think that's my closing comment.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Like I predicted, this is the most fun event I've done this year, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join me, Duna, Pam, Sarah, Brian. Thanks a lot, and I hope to see you all in person, at least in 2022.
That would be fun.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Easy. Thanks for having me.
Bye-bye.